In the last video, we talked about legal research and primary and secondary sources. Primary sources mainly being what we would call binding authority, whereas secondary sources are primarily persuasive authority. But there are situations in which a primary source can be only persuasive and not binding. We also talked about the various types of primary sources and the various types of secondary sources that are commonly seen. And now we are going to talk about research techniques in turning these secondary sources into primary sources and then using our primary sources to proliferate more primary sources. So let's start with secondary sources. And secondary sources have two main functions. First is to educate a researcher. So if you are encountering a new topic of law that you are not familiar with, you start with your secondary sources, which is basically someone who is familiar with that type of law teaching you what it is about. And the second major use is finding primary sources. Okay, so the secondary sources leads you to primary sources if it's a good secondary source. Uh, Once you have primary sources, the trick with legal research is learning to turn these into more primary sources. Okay, and that's what we're going to talk about. So let's start with a case. So let's say that you do your preliminary research by using secondary sources, and the secondary sources tell you about a case and give you the citation, and then you look up that case. So that case itself will probably give you some good information about the legal topic or the legal issue that you're researching. And then you'll want to use this case to find more cases. So what you do is you look at the case, and that case is going to have what are called cited authorities. Right, so we live in a common law jurisdiction where case law and judicial precedents are important primary sources of law. So when you read a case, that case is going to cite other cases that were decided in the past that created judicial precedents that are similar to the case that is being decided presently. And so you can look up these cited authorities and you will find new cases that will also cite their own past decisions. And that is very useful, but perhaps even more useful is to remember that after a case is decided, future cases will cite this case as authority in their decisions. And these are sometimes called citing decisions. And these are really helpful because when sort of get these cases in the future, more you get more recent primary sources, which can help ensure that you're getting the most accurate sources that you need to figure out these legal issues that you're dealing with. So, past in the past, a case will use cited authorities, and then looking towards the future, a case will be subject to cited authorities in future cases, and to find these future cases, they're called citing decisions. And so to find the citing decisions, uh, that would be pretty difficult, but we fortunately have these things called citators. And Lexis has the citator called Shepard cites. Shepard's. And then for Westlaw, you have KeyCite. There are some other minor private citators, but those are the two big ones. And the citators actually literally keep track every time a new decision comes back. The citators look at the cited authorities of the case and then create a network, a database that keeps track of all of the different cases and what past cases they're citing, so that if you're looking at an older case, then you can look ahead into the future of what cases ended up using this older case um, as authority. Now, these citators are not just useful for doing this to cases. Citators can also be used for constitutional provisions, institutions, statutes, and regulations. So you can use a citator to look up cases that have cited a particular constitutional provision or a particular section of a statute or a particular regulation. And that will lead you to a list of cases that have cited whatever primary source of law that you're looking at. For all of these, however, it is particularly useful to narrow these by topic. So both Shepard cites and KeyCites have ways to narrow the citing decisions down by a particular topic or rule of law. I have found sort of mixed results by using those sort of topical narrowers. But if you're dealing with an area of law that's sort of been heavily written about by courts, then using these topical narrowers can help you find cases that are on point to the legal research that you are performing.